I don't want things to be going over our heads. And that's partly why I'm like having these discussions, right? Is so that you don't miss what I'm trying to say. Not in a sense of like I'm not babying you through anything. I am maybe guiding you through, but it's just like in my experience in my life, there were things that I remember, like you know those moments where somebody tells you something and it you just goes at one year out the other, and then years, months later, whatever, like you learn the thing and then it triggers and you're like, oh, that's what he was talking about. I don't want. Sorry, this camera is not doing what it's supposed to be doing. I don't want you to miss that. Now, granted, that's just maybe how life works, right? And so you're going to have that moment of like, no, I don't get it, and then it you're gonna get it. So maybe in me describing it helps more solidify the I don't get it, you know, in the sense that like maybe you listen to the music and you're like, I don't see it. Me explaining it, oh, I see what you're saying. I don't get it, and that's okay. You know, we're progressing through life. We're figuring things out. It is what it is. This next album is about identity and just again thoughts, ideas around identity. Now, it's a weird balancing act trying to be emotional and trying to be intellectual. I'm kind of at a place where I see them kind of being the same thing, different expressions, you know, like you can cry when you're sad or give some soliloquy when you're sad. And that's both being sad, you know. But I understand that these are maybe more philosophical approaches to things and not emotional things. Because at some point, you just need to do the mental legwork. And that's just what it is. You got to think about your life. You need to contemplate. You know, you can't feel yourself to a better life, a new life. You got to think about it. You know, you got to change. You got to think about how you think. You got to think about what you're, you know, that goes into input output, and we've talked all about that. But here we're talking about identity, and in identity there's a lot of facets to it that I just find interesting. I think the question of like, who am I, is really interesting, especially when you consider that nothing is your own. Now, what do I mean by this? I didn't decide my genetics, right? So that was handed down by parents. I didn't decide the influence for until I was conscious enough. And I'm talking not like, oh, I'm conscious at 5 years old. I'm talking I'm 25 realizing things have an effect in my life and I can decide what affects me and what doesn't. What is input and what isn't, right? Life has been molding me. I didn't ask for that. You know, things are impressed on me. Like things, I gravitate to certain things. Why? Why do I like Kendrick Lamar? Why do I like, and you're like, oh, but that's because it's kind of like, because you resonate with it. You know, you're kind of like that. And so you like it at that level. But who decided that I was going to be like that? It wasn't me. I didn't decide I was going to be this nerdy guy who talks philosophy and thinks about the why, the big questions of life. You know, I didn't decide that. Would I have decided? I don't know. Maybe I would have been like the quarterback cliche. That'd be cool, right? I don't know. I don't actually know if you could choose, like if I could choose my character, you know, what would I be? What timeline would I be? Look, I'm going off. But there's just this thing. There's this idea. Maybe it's just today, right? hey, I'm still recording nonstop, right? But maybe it's just that thing of like taking control of your own narrative and having that responsibility over yourself of like, wait, at the end of the day, I know things are, impressed on me and I might not have picked the cards that I was dealt. And even so, this far into my life, maybe I wasn't conscious of how I was playing my cards, but there's still a chance. Like, I'm still holding my cards. This game is not over, you know? I think maybe there's a sense of that. I think of narrative. This one might go over people's heads. Maybe not. It's not a crazy idea. It's just something that we don't think about, which is essentially part of our personality, part of who we are is what we tell ourselves about us. You know what I mean? Like when we remember, like when I say tell me about yourself, that monologue that you go on is based on how you've curated your history. Isn't that interesting? And so I wonder. I don't know. I was working at this restaurant and this it's not a pothead. What do you call people who do shrooms? Not shroom heads. I don't know. Whatever. The shroom heads. That doesn't sound right. But this guy would just like he would be microdosing. That's his thing. You'd macrodose like on the weekends. I don't know, whatever. And he's like all about transmuting energies, and he was that kind of guy. Like, and more power to him, whatever. But he came to me and he was like, the way you change your past affects the trajectory of your future. And I was like, yeah, I guess if you reconstitute the narrative of your life, it'll inform you of who you are, and that then informs how you behave. Okay. And he looked at me like, whoa, you need to do shrooms. You know what I mean? And that's how that went. We were like waiting on some enchiladas and we looked at each other. He said that, I said that, and he said, whoa, you need to do shrooms. Just like that. And I was like, no thanks. I got to that conclusion without it. I'm good. I'm good. But yeah, that is an interesting idea though, of like the narrative we tell ourselves. And I think like a gut-centered person, what they would be like is like, yeah, don't be persuaded by the victim mentality. Like you're in charge of your narrative and da da da. Like it's that, but more sensitive. I'm not that I'm trying to be compassionate, but I mean exactly that. I just don't like that sentiment, of like, yeah, it's easy, just do it. And it's like, come on, dude. People have lives and feelings and things are complicated, right? Like just having that compassion. We were talking about that a couple months ago. For me, a couple hours ago, maybe a couple minutes. I don't remember. But for you, a couple months. Now, identity, such a strange thing. So let me think. Well, I mean, in my life, what I imagine, and I literally write it. And that's the thing about these albums. Like, they're pretty, like, nose on. What is it? On the nose. They're on the nose, right? But the conversation is so much better, I think. At least that's what I'm convincing myself of, like the value of the music. Like, yeah, you might not like the music, but like the conversation, like isn't that conversation worth it? Like, oh, these are good ideas. These are cool ideas. Let's talk about the ideas, guys. Like the music, don't worry about the music. I know, but the ideas, So that's like my saving grace in all of this. So yeah, the music up to now probably on the nose, right? Regardless, in the first song that you'll hear, there's this line. I thought I was psycho. The hell do I know? I pushed it all down, crystallized, couldn't break it with ultrasound, whatever. I actually don't know if those are the lyrics or not, but the point is, I thought I was like literally, I was, I, I, how do I say this? I looked back, I saw these little habits. I mean, it's the same way that like when you have ADHD, then everything you do, oh, that's the ADHD. You told yourself you had ADHD. That informs the narrative of your life saying you have ADHD. What if you don't have ADHD? So with me, it was, wait, what if I'm not a sociopath? You know? I could have sworn to you I was. I was such a jerk, inconsiderate, didn't love people, only thought of myself, and everything was about me because I was this amazing, intelligent person. And that's how like I base self-worth. And that's how I told myself that I was worth something, was because I was a super intelligent person that was very thoughtful, not in a human way, but in like a philosophy kind of way, which is like absolutely worthless. You know what I mean? No offense to philosophers, but they know like, hey, we're doing this. This is just fun. Like no one is thinking, oh, should I make this decision based on a utilitarian standpoint, or should I do this based on like a Kantian ethics? Like, what should I do here? You know, they just do. You know, they're not really thinking about it. They just do. And we're here like sitting in our armchair and thinking and pondering. And it's just fun. It's just our nature, and that is like the wonder we pursue, and that's the love that we have, is to pursue that wonder. Cool. Going back a little bit. Sorry. I thought I was a sociopath. 100%. I was telling myself that. I was like, oh, yeah, you know, based on these habits, symptoms, blah, 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 I must do it because I WebMD'd it. And that must be the case. It's not the case, you know. It's this weird thing. There is this pastor. His name is Craig Groeschel. Not sure. But he had this like sermon series. One of his sermons, he talked about this idea that like in an instant, we ask ourselves, like when we make a decision, we're always subconsciously like at the speed of light. You know what I mean? We are making the decision of who am I and what would I do in this situation? And then that's what you end up doing. That's the decision, the choice that you make. So what I mean is, if you tell yourself, if the narrative is, I'm a liar, what would a liar do in this situation? Would they lie? Maybe. Like, yeah, that's an easy, simple thing, but that might be the case. Like, fit it into your skin suit, you know, like fit this shirt, this dress, whatever, fit it onto you. But what nanosecond decisions are you making? Are you telling yourself, who am I and what would that kind of person do? I'm the struggling artist. What would the struggling artist do? I'm a leader. I'm independent. What would independence look like here? You know what I mean? And then he talks about how like that is something that we can challenge and we don't have to accept, and we can change. Great sermon. And that's kind of what I'm getting at, not in the hopeful sense like Craig Rochelle and talking about like, hey, we can change this, but just the exploration. We'll get to what amalgamates to all of this at the end. But I mean, yeah, I guess maybe I should intermittently give some hope out. And that becomes the question is, like, I guess this is for the young Christian, the Christian, the surface level Christian. I'm sorry to say that, but like, if you've been a Christian for more than 2 years and you haven't had this line of questioning and thinking and exploration and wrestling with, like, then you've got a lot to catch up on. You know what I mean? And so the question is, who do I say I am? And who does God say I am? Now, there's a few Bible verses and stories. I think of the story of Gideon, where Gideon is literally hiding in a wine press. He's like at the bottom of a wine press. And an angel says, "Valiant man of God, come out." Come out of being a coward, you valiant man of God. I think of that. And then there's this verse in Corinthians. I think it's 1 Corinthians. I don't remember the chapter. But he says, I don't let other people judge me. I don't judge myself. That doesn't make me innocent, but only God judges me, right? Like, I don't get my worth and validation from other people, and I don't make the call of who I am. I don't decide my worth and validation. That doesn't make me innocent, right? I still mess up, and I'm still wrong, and I'm still bad, and or broken. I'm all of these things, but only God decides who I am. That's homework right there. That's homework. Guys, check out my album. It comes out. Identity. Numero 3. Roman numero 3. Identity comes out this Wednesday. Thank you so much. See ya.